Hello, everyone. Professor Sexton here with the last video lecture on the play Disgrace. This is on scene four. Scene four is a very short scene of the play, and so this video lecture won't be very long. Scene four occurs 6 months after scene three. So remember that scene three is where there was a dinner party and a lot of things were revealed, such as the fact that Jory had been made a partner at the law firm instead of Amir, that Emily and Isaac had slept together a year previous in London, and Amir found that out as well. And also, scene three ending with Amir beating Emily in that last part before Abe comes in. So, scene four occurs 6 months after that. When scene four opens up, what we see is we see Amir in the apartment by himself. Most of the furniture and most of the things in the apartment are gone. On the wall where the painting of him has been, that is now empty. And so obviously he's in the process of moving. In the process of moving, there's a knock on the door, and it is Emily and Abe. Um, the reason why they've come is that Abe has gotten into some kind of trouble. But also, there's something that you should notice about Abe here. Abe in this scene of the play is very different than what he was in the first scene of the play. So remember in the first scene of the play when he first enters into the apartment, the way that he's dressed. A kid robot t-shirt, skinny jeans, high tops, everything that can be as American be can be, almost as if he's trying too hard to be an American. But this time when he comes in, he's wearing a Muslim skull cap. His wardrobe is muted, unlike the vibrant colors that we saw in the first scene. So obviously between scene one and scene four, a lot has happened to Abe. Now, unfortunately, we don't know what all has transpired between scene one and scene four because we've only seen Abe in scene one. We didn't see him in scene two or scene three. And so we're reintroduced to him in scene four. But scene four, in a lot of ways, opened up just the way that scene one did. So if you recall in scene one, Abe comes to the apartment because he wants Amir to be a member of the Aman's defense team, not to in an official capacity, but just to be there as a type of support. And that's how everything starts. Abe is coming back this time in a similar situation. And also, once again, at the encouragement of Emily, because Abe has been reaching out to Emily instead of to Amir, which is exactly what had happened in scene one. That every time that Abe had been trying to get in contact with Amir, Amir wasn't returning his calls, wasn't responding. So Abe had to go through Emily. And you see that this is the same thing here in scene four. And so that is why the two of them are here. So Abe explains to Amir what has happened. And essentially, Amir and a friend of his, a guy by the name of Tariq, were at a Starbucks. And Tariq was interested in the barista, but she wasn't interested in him. And Tariq just wasn't reading the physical cues that this woman was uninterested in him. And as they continued to talk, like some frustration happened. And eventually, Tariq started to say things that could be construed as terrorist actions and words. And the barista called the police, and the police called and arrested both Tariq and Abe. So Abe has come to get advice from his uncle about what he should do next in this situation. But what ends up happening is this. Instead of Amir offering assistance to Abe, and Abe is going back to using his birth name of Hussein at this time too. Instead of Amir offering assistance to Abe, it becomes more of an issue or in a discussion of what it means to be a Muslim American male in America in post 9/11. And you get this argument between Abe and Amir because for a long time, Abe looked up to Amir, and he no longer does that. Um, I'm not going to go over the scene verbatim, so you'll need to read it for yourself because there's nuances of it that I just can't do in this lecture. But there's one scene, and this is on page 83 of my text, which should be the same as your PDF, where Abe expresses the fact, well, Amir tells Abe that if he's not careful, he's going to get deported and end up going back to Pakistan. And Abe says, maybe that's the best thing to do. And Amir says, you haven't been there since you were 8 years old. You have no connections to that country. And then Amir starts to talk about why his parents and why Abe's parents had moved to America offer the sense of a better life. And when Amir says that, Abe retorts and it's like, you know, you don't have a better life. And Amir's like, what are you talking about? And Abe says, I know you were fired. And then Abe says, I know what you did to her. How could you? And then this is where this kind of like unleashes this frustration that Abe has because Abe says to Amir, you want something from these people you will never get. And so Abe is finally telling Amir, I don't want to say the truth, but Abe is finally telling Amir the way that he sees Amir. Um, and Abe goes on to further say that it's disgusting. The one thing I can be sure about with you, you're always turning on your own people. You think it makes these people like you more when you do that. They don't. They just think you hate yourself. And they're right. You do. I looked up to you. You have no idea. So you see like there's this change in Abe from scene one to scene four. And it's conceivable that it has a lot to do with the end of scene three when Abe walked in and saw what Amir had done to Emily. And but he also sees that his uncle has been trying so desperately to fit into American society, you know, hiding elements of who he is, denying his culture, denying his heritage. And all of a sudden it occurs to Abe that this is not the way in which he wants to live his life. On the top of page 85, he tells Amir, for 300 years, they've been taking our land, drawing new borders, replacing our laws, making us want to be like them, look like them, marry their women. They disgrace us. They disgrace us. Abe says this twice, and now you see where the title of the play comes from. And then they pretend they don't understand the rage we've got. This comment by Abe is very important because if you go back and you look at scene three, a lot of what happened to Amir in scene three is exactly what Abe describes here. Now, it's uncertain whether Amir is willing to hear this, but Amir is in the process of rethinking things about his life. But eventually, Abe just gives up on his uncle. You know, he says, "No, I'll handle it myself, uncle," and he leaves. So you can really see this frustration that Abe has towards Amir for various reasons. This then leaves Emily and Amir in the apartment by themselves. And it's interesting what Akhtar does here because scene four somewhat reverses scene one. And what I mean by that, when scene one first opens up, the first two people that we see in the apartment are Emily and Amir discussing the racist incident that happened at the restaurant the night previously, and Emily doing this painting of Amir in the style of Vasquez. Scene four kind of reverses that. So scene four opens up with Emily, Amir, and Abe. Then Abe leaves. Then it leaves just Emily and Amir. So in a lot of ways, the play ends the way that it started. And the painting does become important in this last scene as well. And because one of the first things that Amir says to Emily when the two of them are together, he says, I got the painting. And Emily says, I didn't want to throw it out. So you kind of sense that even there that they really have moved on. And the thing is, either they are divorced or they're in the process of getting a divorce, is what happening in scene four. And Amir believes that Emily hates him because he says, if you hate me so much, why did you drop the charges? And then Emily responds, I don't hate you. So what's important here, when Amir beat Emily at the end of scene three, and there were charges against Amir, Emily dropped those charges. Um, and she says to him, I don't hate you. But you can see that in scene four, Emily has moved on. Amir has not, because Amir has been writing her letters and he asked her, I don't know if you read any of my letters. There's a lot you were right about me. I finally seen what you were seeing. I'm finally understanding your work. So it's almost as if Amir is apologizing for all the things that he said in scene one and sometimes in scene two and scene three about her artwork. But she rebuts by saying, my work was naive. And further on, she says, and this is interesting, she says, I was selfish. My work, it made me blind. The play doesn't really tell us what that means. And so there's various interpretations here. One way, and this is just one way, and I'm not saying that this is the right way, this is just one possible interpretation. It is conceivable that part of Emily's relationship with the mirror was exactly what Isaac hinted at in scene two and said in scene three, that because she was such a proponent of Islamic art, that she got into a relationship with a man with Islamic background, and that her art was driving this relationship. Because she says, I was selfish, my work, and made me blind. What she doesn't say is what it made her blind to. So for us as audience, reading the play or watching the play, we have to figure that out. To this, Amir responds. He starts off with saying, I just, and it's a long pause and becomes very emotional. He says, I just want you to be proud of me. I want you to be proud you were with me. This too goes back to something that was said in scene three. So if you remember in scene three, when Amir and Jory had went out to get champagne, and Emily and Isaac were left alone in the apartment, and Isaac started to talk about the painting, and particularly how in the painting that Emily had done, that it was a mirror looking out at the viewer, and that viewer was Emily. And Isaac makes all these assumptions about what Amir saw in Emily. When Amir makes this statement here, I just want you to be proud of me. I want you to be the proud you were with me. It kind of solidifies those things that Isaac has said in scene three. So once again, a lot of these things that have been revealed earlier in the play are all kind of coming to a head. When Amir says this to Emily, these are Emily's words to Amir, and actually the last words of the play. She says, goodbye, Amir. Please don't write me anymore. Those are the last words of the play. And that more than anything kind of symbolized that Emily has moved on. It makes you wonder about the nature of their relationship, how genuine the relationship was. And as I said, it's difficult for us to figure out these things because the play doesn't tell us these things directly. I mean, for instance, we don't know how long Emily and Amir have been together. There's no indication of that in the play. So there's a lot of things that we don't know. And so a lot of times, all we can go on are the words and actions. But even though those are the last words of the play, is not the last part of the play. So here's the last part of the play. After Emily says, goodbye, Amir, please don't write me anymore. Here are the descriptions. She exits. There's a long beat. As Amir walks over to return to packing, he notices the partially wrapped canvas against the wall. He walks over to it, picks it up, then tears the rest of the wrapping off. From his position on stage, we will only see enough of the painting to realize it's Emily's portrait of him, study after Vasquez Moore. He takes a long, searching look, lights out. So, the very last part of the play ends how the play began. So the play began with um, Amir and Emily discussing this painting and how she was modeling Amira after Vasquez apprentice slave Moore, and how upset that Amir was about Emily doing this portrait of him in that style, not liking it. And you see how that painting comes back, in scene three when Isaac is talking about it. And so at the very end of the play, that painting reappears. It's interesting that Emily has gotten rid of the play. I mean, I'm sorry, gotten rid of the painting. As a matter of fact, as she said, the reason why she gave it back to Amir was because she didn't want to throw it away. And even the fact that she was considering throwing it away says a lot. What exactly does it say? That's something that we have to, that's up to interpretation. But what I find really interesting about this last scene is when Amir takes that long, searching look at the play, I mean, at the painting. And the thing that I'm always asking myself is when he takes that long, searching look, what is he looking at in that painting? And why is it described as a searching look? If you think about what Abe had just said previously about Amir hating himself and Amir hiding his identity, and just even look at the cover of the play with the title Disgrace across Amir's face, you kind of get the sense that Amir is someone who either doesn't know who he is or knows who he is and trying to hide that. And perhaps by him taking that long searching look, either he's finally seeing himself as he really is, perhaps he's seeing himself as Emily saw him, perhaps he's seeing himself as other people have seen him, or perhaps he's taking that long searching look because for the first time in his life, it's conceivable that he's really taking a deep look at himself and trying to figure out who he is. Because think of it this way: Amir has spent most of his life checking off all the boxes and doing everything that he could do to succeed. Changing his last name so that he can get into a law firm that he can advance in. Notice how much he talked about how much he worked. Like usually he was the first one there, the last one to leave. Um, the time and energy that he invested in his relationship with Emily. Think about the fact that he spent $600 on shirts. So all of these things that Amir has done outside, outward appearances, to put on a good face. Yet all of that is gone. The wife is gone. The job is gone. The apartment is gone. And with all of those things that are gone, the only thing that he now has left is self, because all those trappings are no longer there. And perhaps that taking that long searching look is the first time that he's really taken a look at himself. This video lecture, I know, has not done justice to the nuances of scene four, and that's why it is very important that you read the play for yourself. It's a very complex play. I've read this play numerous times, and each time I read it, I find new things that I didn't realize before. I see things differently. It's a quick read, so it might be to your benefit to give it a second read, or I mean, at least some of the scenes again, particularly scene three. So I hope that you've enjoyed Disgrace, and I will see you in the next video lecture. Bye, everyone.